All right, good morning, everyone. So, a couple of years ago, my housemate at the time, she told me that she was heading out on a holiday the next morning, really early in the morning. So tell me why, the next morning when I wake up, even though it's a time that I know she should have left the house, I'm hearing all these sounds in our house, like footsteps going up and down the stairs, tiptoeing around, stuff's being moved, and I'm like, oh my goodness gracious me. Who's in the house? Like, are we getting robbed? And so I was stressing out, all peace was gone. And I was starting to think about like, what was I gonna do? Like, should I play dead? Should I hide under my bed? Maybe I should like grab a weapon, try and fight for myself, but that won't go well. And so then I like messaged my now husband at the time and I was like, there's someone in the house. So at least if I were to get like murdered or something, there'd be someone who would know time signatures, call the police, all that stuff. So I really thought it through. Turns out the airport isn't as far from my house as I thought it was. So my housemate was very much still at home. She was just trying to tiptoe around and be considerate of the fact that I was sleeping. So it was a crisis averted. I was just panicking for no reason. But oh my goodness, all peace was gone from my heart in that moment. And so hopefully you haven't had that same exact experience, but I'm sure all of us, for right or for wrong, have had moments where we felt all peace leave our body, like something steal our peace. And so I want you to cheer if you can relate to this. Have you ever lost all sense of peace because there's some kind of wasp or mosquito or bee flying around you? Yeah, I thought that. Okay, what about this one? At DTI this year, there's been quite a few seagulls. Has anyone been woken up or heard all these like loud seagulls in the morning? Yeah? Yesterday morning was very, very strange. Okay, what about this one? Have you ever had anyone or seen something online that just rage baits you? Yeah, it might be a person that you know. They just know how to push your buttons. Some people try not to look at the person next to them or like give them eyes. But rage baiting is like so ingrained in our culture that it was Oxford Dictionary's word of the year last year. So that shows you how much peace being stolen from us is embedded in our culture right now. So, those are some scenarios, but if we go a little bit deeper, maybe you've had your peace stolen when you think about exams and results day coming up in a couple of weeks. Or maybe you might have some tough stuff going on in your friendship group or your family, and that might feel like it steals your peace. Maybe some of you feel like peace is being robbed whenever you think about the fact that DTI ends tomorrow and you're going to go back to normality, whatever's at home. You might know what it's like to lie in bed, riddled with anxiety, peace nowhere to be found. These are very, very real challenges. Peace can be stolen so quickly. But there's good news for us today, because when we walk with Jesus, he says that we can become peace-filled disciples. We can be peaceful disciples. And so the question today that we're going to think about is how? How can we be peaceful disciples in a world that so easily steals and robs us of our peace? And so as we think about what that looks like, we're going to look to Jesus' OG disciples in a moment where they definitely had no sense of peace. And so let's set the scene. Picture this. You've given up everything to follow Jesus. Like, forget the tax collecting, forget the fishing, forget your old way of life. It's all Jesus. He's the Messiah. He's the long-awaited Son of God who was sent to redeem us, to save us from humanity and from sin and bring us back into right relationship with God. And he's here. It's amazing. There's nothing that's better than this. But then things take an unexpected turn. Jesus was crucified on a cross 3 days ago in a humiliating and public way. All hope seems lost, future uncertain, peace gone, and fear kicks in. One of the other gospel accounts tells us that in this passage that we're going to read, the disciples were hiding in a room because they were so scared of what might happen to them because they had been associated with Jesus. But then the rumors start to spread. He's gone. But he's not gone like he's been stolen, but he's risen. Jesus is alive. And he starts to appear to his disciples and they're wondering like, what is going on? They're hiding in this room. They're chatting together about this. And this is where we pick up in Luke chapter 24, verse 36 to 49. It says this. While they were still talking about this, Jesus himself stood among them and said to them, "Peace be with you." They were startled and frightened, thinking they saw a ghost. He said to them, "Why are you troubled? And why do doubts rise in your mind? Look at my hands and my feet. It is I myself. Touch me and see. A ghost does not have flesh and bones as you see I have." When he had said this, he showed them his hands and feet. And while they still did not believe it because of joy and amazement, he asked them, "Do you have anything to eat?" They gave him a piece of broiled fish, and he took it and ate it in their presence. He said to them, "This is what I told you while I was still with you. Everything must be fulfilled that is written about me in the law of Moses, the prophets, and the Psalms." Then he opened their minds so they could understand the scriptures. He told them, "This is what is written. The Messiah will suffer and rise from the dead on the third day, and repentance for the forgiveness of sins will be preached in his name to all nations, beginning at Jerusalem. You are witnesses of these things. I'm going to send you what my Father has promised, but stay in the city until you have been clothed with power from on high." What an amazing passage, right? But let's not overlook how crazy this is, because imagine you are Jesus' disciples, and instead of Jesus to like knock on the door or to like ring your ring doorbell, so you look at your phone and you're like, "Oh my gosh, it's Jesus, what?" Like, he just teleports into the room like it's normal. It's like, "Greetings." Like, that's not a normal thing to do or to happen. If that happened to me, I think I'd be freaking out a little bit. And so I noticed a few things about about the disciples' response to Jesus that shows that their peace had been stolen in some way. Thing number one, in verse 37, it says, they were startled, frightened, thinking they saw a ghost. So understandably, they were physically startled. They were in shock. Like, when you're startled, it's when something happens that's unexpected. And so maybe you can relate to that. Like, you receive some unexpected news, a false rumor is being spread about you. You hear something about a loved one that really shakes you up. That might steal our peace. So the disciples were startled. The second thing I noticed about their response was that they were frightened. Like, there was actual fear of what had just appeared in front of them because they didn't understand it. And this fear is an emotion that rises up when we feel threatened. You know, threatened by the fear of the unknown, fear of failure, fear of the future, fear of change. I'm sure many of us in this room can relate to feeling that at some point or the other. So fear might steal our peace. The third thing that I noticed is that they thought they saw a ghost. And isn't it true that where our thoughts go can sometimes rob us of our peace? You know, we might overthink our interactions or conversations with someone, what they think of us. Or there might be thoughts of comparison, which can steal our peace, particularly in a world where there's so much stuff online to compare ourselves to. And with the invention of algorithms, you could like be scrolling and you find out about how much protein you're supposed to be eating, and then it just feeds you lots and lots of stuff, and you're like, "Oh my gosh, I can't keep up with this." And that feeling of like comparison and not being able to keep up with these standards, that can rob us of so much peace. So these disciples, they were startled, they were frightened, they thought they'd seen a ghost, so they were not very peaceful in this moment. But how does Jesus react to these panicked disciples? Well, he does that thing that you do when you walk into a room and you know there's someone like with headphones on, or they haven't heard you enter, and you know like anything that you do or say is going to make them jump. So you say the very thing that you know that they need to hear. Who can remember what Jesus' words to them was? Yeah, I heard someone say it. In verse 37, he says, "Peace be with you." In the midst of fear, of shock, of thoughts running wild, Jesus' offer to his disciples then and to us today is of peace. But what is this peace that Jesus offers? I want you to turn to your neighbor and say, "Shalom." And now turn to your other neighbor and say, "Shalom." All right. You might have heard this word before, maybe in TV shows or like sing it in like primary school singing assemblies. Does anyone know the song like "Shalom, shalom, may peace be with you"? I feel like I heard one person sing it. No one knows that song. Oh, a few people, yes? Primary school banger, yeah, there we go. Well, shalom in the Bible, in the Old Testament is a word which means peace, and in the New Testament is translated as a word called eirene. They mean the same thing, but essentially it's a peace of God. And the Jewish people would have used it as a blessing or a prayer when they would have seen each other, almost like a greeting. So you'd see your friend, you say, shalom, shalom. And so in some senses, when Jesus says this to his disciples, he is just greeting them. But when Jesus says something, it means so much more than that. And there's something deeper about the peace that Jesus was offering them in this moment. And so in one of the other Gospels, Jesus says this, and I want you to shout out the word peace when you read it on the screen. So we're going to read it together. Here we go. Peace I leave with you. My peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. So Jesus is saying that the peace that he offers is so different from the world's. And I think oftentimes in our world, we can think of peace as the absence of problems, like that shocking situation sorting itself out, or the thing that made us frightened to disappear, or no more scenarios where we can overthink or panic or compare. And yes, God does bring peace in that way, but he's so much more than that, the peace that Jesus brings. And sometimes if we go through these things and we just think of peace as the absence of the problems, then if we can't find that, then we can search for a solution in the wrong places. Like we can look to people, we can scroll mindlessly online to try and numb ourselves out, which just isn't the peace that Jesus brings. It's like putting a plaster on a gushing wound. It's not true peace. There's something greater and deeper about what Jesus gives us. In Philippians 4, verse 7, he describes the peace of God like this. So I want you to shout it out when you see it again. Here we go. The peace of God, which transcends all understanding. The peace of God transcends all understanding because it's not based on a situation or a circumstance getting easier or changing necessarily, but it's based on a person that is with us. You see, peace has a name, and his name is Jesus. The Bible calls him, there we go. His name is Jesus. The Bible calls him the Prince of Peace. It says that the peace of Christ rule in your lives. It calls him the God of all peace. C.S. Lewis, the guy who wrote Narnia, who's also a theologian, in his book Mere Christianity, he put it like this. He says, God cannot give us a happiness or a peace apart from himself because it is not there. There is no such thing. He is peace. And so when Jesus appeared to his disciples and he said, peace be with you, he really, really meant it. He meant it because it was him. He was there in the flesh. That's why he made it such a big deal to try and prove to them that this was his body. He was alive. He even wanted to have fish and chips without the chips with them to prove that he was embodied. He is alive. He is risen. And so guys, we can be peaceful disciples, not because our circumstances change, not because life gets easier, but because of the one who is present with us. How amazing is that? I think of it like this. It's like going on a hike and not knowing where you're going or what situations you're going to come across, but knowing that the person with you, the guide of your hike, he's got everything that you need. He's got you covered. If it's rainy, he's got a raincoat. If it's sunny, he's got sun cream. If it's freezing, like maybe some of you felt at DTI, he's got layers, he's got blankets, he's got an airbed, he's got a hot water bottle. He's got everything you need. And so you don't have to worry. You don't have to worry because you know whose presence you are in. And this is what it looks like for us to be peace-filled disciples. And it's a peace that would turn these frightened disciples into those who would be willing to die and be crucified and be martyred for the sake of following Jesus and carrying his message into the world, like we've heard about this week. And so if peace was available to them, even through those tough situations, then it's available to us too today. So if Jesus offers us peace, then how do we receive it? The first thing I want us to know is that we need to come close. Everyone say, come close. In Luke 24:38-40, it says this. He said to them, why are you troubled? And why do doubts rise in your mind? Look at my hands and my feet. It is I myself. Touch me and see. A ghost does not have flesh and bones, as you see I have. When he had said this, he showed them his hands and his feet. Jesus' response to their lack of peace was by inviting his disciples to come close. He was saying, come to me, come close. This is the best place to be. This is where you find true peace in his presence. Does anyone know the song, I Speak Jesus? Yeah? Well, there's a line in it that goes like, I know there is peace within your presence. I speak Jesus. There's peace in his presence. And when you're in someone's presence, it means that you're near to them. You know, it's not like Jesus is going to bank transfer you the peace or he wants to like Amazon Prime it to you and it's like delivered to your house. No, we serve a relational and personal God who wants to call his children to be close with him, to walk through life with him, not from a distance, but from up close, which is part of why God sent Jesus in the first place, to dwell among us so that he can come close to us. But I say this, but I can empathize with these panicked disciples. Because doesn't that feel like a really counterproductive thing to do if you think you've seen a ghost? That's the last thing that I would do. I'd be running away, hiding. And often in times where we feel like our peace has been robbed, when exams don't go as we expect or life is stressful, we can run and we can hide. We can turn to distractions, to coping mechanisms, to isolating ourselves from others and from God, because it feels really, really vulnerable. We might draw away. Maybe some of you, if you're completely honest, you're in that place right now where it just feels scary to trust certain things in your life to God, and you doubt that coming close to Jesus is actually going to change you or have an impact on the situations that you find yourself in. But you know what's amazing? Jesus sees the place that you're in, like he saw his disciples. He knows your thoughts, he knows your hearts, he knows your worries, and he knows your fears. And like with his disciples, he wouldn't even let a locked door get in between them and him and his offer of peace by coming close to him. That same offer is available to you today. He invites you to come close and examine his nail-pierced hands and feet. His hands and his feet, which are a reminder that he knows what it's like to walk through hardships and tough times and have peace robbed. His hands and feet, which show his great love for us through his sacrifice on the cross, and his hands and feet, which show his victory over death, and that he would not let anything, not even death itself, stand in the way of coming close to us and inviting us into freedom and life with him, into a life where we can have the same peace that he offers in his presence. These hands and feet show that he is alive, and if he is alive, then we can have peace. And though we can't physically touch Jesus like his disciples could have back then, there are so many ways that we can come close to Jesus. And one of those ways is through worship, through sung worship. Who here has enjoyed worshiping the Lord this week? Yeah, it's been amazing. Really, really precious times in God's presence. And the thing is, when we worship, like Beth said at the start, we're singing to Jesus, songs to him, for him, and about him. Like that's us turning our gaze off of ourselves, off of our situations. And like Jesus inviting his disciples, we're coming close to him. We're looking to him. And so as we do that, we know that there is peace in his presence. So every year at DTI, like last night, people write stories, testimonies of how we've encountered God and the things that we've seen him doing in our lives and in the lives of those around us. And last year, there were over 100 stories sent in with the word peace in it, many of which were encountered during worship, where people had encountered the presence of Jesus, even in the midst of tough times. And so I'm going to share a couple stories. Here's one from last year. There was someone who, right before DTI 25, received devastating news that a loved one had passed away. And they were pretty angry with God, understandably, and weren't sure they were even going to continue to be a Christian. But this is what they said. At DTI, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace whilst worshiping and instantly knew it was God. I now have more stability for an extremely tough time. God is good and with me. And I now have faith that I'm going to make it through this time. Praise the Lord. So for this young person, the situation hadn't changed, but when they came close to God in worship, they encountered the peace of his presence, and they knew that God was with them. That situation completely, like they had a re-envisioning of it because of the peace of Jesus with them. But this peace isn't confined to worship at DTI or the four walls of this place. We can worship Jesus wherever we are in different circumstances and places. Here's a story from one of my young people. So she had a situation where on a Thursday, she had a really tough time with some of her friends. Like there was a friendship that broke down. And the next day, well, that night actually, sorry, she was woken up at 3 a.m. by a mosquito buzzing in her room, trying to bite her. Horrible. Like, you think the day was bad enough already, and now there's a mosquito trying to get you. And so in that moment, peace was robbed. But instead of her to turn to social media and scroll, she chose to press into worship, to listen to worship music and turn and fix her gaze on Jesus, to come close to him. And as she went through the rest of that day, she was journaling her thoughts before the Lord and got to the end of the day and was like, you know what? Even though this day didn't start how she anticipated, and even though the situation with her friends still caused her some hurt, she had a peace because she knew he was with her and that he would walk her through that tough time. And for me personally, as you can see, I've had knee surgery. I had an operation 3 weeks ago on my birthday. Thank you guys. And as I sat in the hospital waiting to be operated on, I got waves of like anxiety and the peace leaving my body. And it was kind of the fear of the unknown, because the doctor said, oh, we can't really tell you what we're going to do to your knee. It's going to be one of 2 operations, one which would mean I can like stand here today, and the other where I'd be in like a bigger brace, but they wouldn't know until they'd gone in and then I woke up. And so I was feeling quite anxious. And then to make matters worse, the surgeon who came in to see me, at the end of it, she was like, I'll see you on the other side. She's like, how is that going to fill you with peace? So anyway, I was sitting there feeling pretty sorry for myself. And then I start to hear something in the background. And I hear, I praise when I feel it. I praise when I don't. And I'm like, where is that coming from? And one of the nurses in the hospital was playing worship music on her phone. And so she came into the room and I was like, who's playing that music? She was like, yeah, it's me. I was like, I'm a Christian too. And she seemed completely underwhelmed. But for me in that moment, it was just like a reminder of Jesus' presence with me. It was an invitation to come close to him, even in a really tough time. And so yes, the circumstances didn't change. I still had a knee operation, but there was a peace that settled on me because I was reminded of who was with me, that peace himself was present with me in the midst of a tough time. And so as we come close to Jesus, when we lack peace, we allow him to show us just how powerful he is and just how much peace there truly is in his presence. And I just encourage you guys, like, it is really easy to like turn to other things. But if we never actually choose to trust Jesus, that he is peace in those moments and run towards him to come close to him, then we'll never actually experience the peace that he offers. The life-changing peace that transcends all understanding. I feel like we need to have like a holy FOMO if we don't choose to come close to Jesus in those times. So we can be peaceful disciples when we come close to Jesus. Another way we can do this is by seeking him in the scriptures. Everyone say, seek him in the scriptures. We're going to skip ahead to verse 44 to 37. And he said this, "This is what I told you while I was still with you. Everything must be fulfilled that is written about me in the law of Moses, the prophets, and the Psalms." Then he opened their minds so they could understand the scriptures. He told them, "This is what is written. The Messiah will suffer and rise from the dead on the 3rd day, and repentance for the forgiveness of sins will be preached in his name to all nations, beginning at Jerusalem." What is Jesus saying here? He's saying that the law, the prophets, and the Psalms, which is essentially our Old Testament, everything before Jesus came, points towards him, and it was not a surprise to God. What they see in his suffering, his death, his resurrection was all intentional and part of God's plan to redeem humanity. You just have to look to the scriptures and it all points to Jesus. And so when he opened their mind to the scriptures and to understand it, he was showing them a deeper understanding of who the Jesus standing before them was. Not their misunderstanding of who he was, not that he's a ghost, but who Jesus actually is. And so we can be peaceful disciples when we seek him in the scriptures and we gain a greater understanding of the Jesus who is with us, who he actually is. Now, when I was 13 years old, my dad died, and over the years, God has taken me on a journey of really great healing, and he's shown me who he is. But I remember a few years ago, I'd been listening to this audiobook about a guy who was a Muslim and then became a Christian, which was like my dad. And as I listened to that book, there were so many parallels around his life and his journey to faith that I was like, oh wow, this is really, really cool. And then I get to the end of the book, and I start hearing all these different voices saying nice things about him. I'm like, This sounds a bit like a eulogy when someone dies. And so I Googled it, I looked it up, and this guy died from the exact same cancer that killed my dad. And it just felt like a dagger in my heart. I was weeping. I went to the bathroom to cry so I wouldn't wake up my housemate. And I just thought, like, God, what is going on? I felt all peace leave. I was hit with waves of loss and grief all over again. I was crying out to God, like, God, help. Like, what do I do in this circumstance? And in that moment, a verse popped into my head. It was Psalm 68, verse 5, which says, "A father to the fatherless and a husband to the widows is God in his dwelling place." And that was a significant verse in my life because after my dad had died, my mom used to say this a lot, almost like an anchor for us, a reminder of who God is, who the God who is with us was. And so that's what it did for me in that moment. It reminded me that, yes, my circumstances hadn't changed. Yes, my dad had still died, and this situation was really painful still. And yet the God who was with me was my heavenly Father. And that shifted something. The overwhelming sense of like restlessness and anger was gone, and I was filled with the peace of God because of the God who is with me. And so guys, if you're worried about exam results that are stealing your peace, remember that he says in his word that he is abounding in steadfast love and faithfulness. So he's faithful towards you regardless of the outcome. That's who he is in his scriptures. If you've got a health issue that's robbing you of your peace, remember that in his word, he says, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." He is a powerful God. And if you're struggling with overthinking or worrying about what other people think about you, and that might be stealing your peace, remember that the word says that he's your creator and he's your father. He loves you. And so his opinion of who you are is much greater than anyone else's. And he can walk you through any circumstance that you might go through. So we can be peaceful disciples when we come close to Jesus and we seek him in his scriptures. We can really, truly receive this gift of peace in the midst of all that we go through. And what's amazing is the story doesn't end there. Because for Jesus, his disciples, once he'd filled them with his peace, once they've seen him, he sends them out. In verse 48 to 49, the risen Jesus says this to them. He says, "You are witnesses of these things. I'm going to send you what my Father has promised. But stay in the city until you've been clothed with power from on high." Jesus didn't just give his disciples this gift of peace, this understanding of who he is from his scriptures, so that they could stay hidden in that room. No, he wants to send them out so that they can be witnesses to other people in this world, so that they can show their families and their friendships and that those that they don't know, the peace that is available in Jesus, the peace that transcends all understanding. You know, the Bible tells us that we have feet fitted with the readiness of the gospel of peace. We wear it like shoes on our feet. And Josh is going to talk more about it this evening. But as you leave DTI, guys, to conclude, you will definitely come across situations, big and small, that will want to rob you of your peace. You'll find yourself in circumstances where things feel really, really tough. But you can know that peace himself, Jesus, is with you and invites you to come close, to seek him in his scriptures, to know who he truly is, to let him be your guide, and then to go back into those circumstances, to go into tough situations, carrying his peace that will cause others to look at your life and look at the peace that you have. And then when they ask you, what is different about you, you can point and you can say it's him, that is Jesus.